So, I would like to introduce myself to you and to talk to you about the autobiography of my research question. And both introductions and autobiographies are there to offer either a snapshot or a story of a person. And we practice giving these accounts of ourselves all the time, of course. And in the course of that, I think that we stumble upon certain norms in relation to introducing ourselves and accounting for who we are. So right now, for instance, I feel really tempted to say what department I'm from, what the name of my research project is, and maybe something about my cultural background and upbringing, and certain lived experiences which have brought me to this institution to pursue my research. And it so happens, and this is also why I was especially interested in participating in today's event, that my research is itself preoccupied with preconceived notions about what a self is, what auto is, and so this is necessarily going to influence how I go about introducing myself and the autobiography I offer. For example, we want here to establish a personal connection, and that's why I've been asked not to prepare any slides, but to come instead simply as I am, to abandon the rigidity of formal presentation and to speak freely about the research and the position from which I do the research. And there is something truly nice about that, isn't there? To watch someone unscripted, to watch them struggle for the next word, struggle on the spot to work themselves out. There's something authentic about that, compared to, for example, watching someone read out from a script that they have prepared in advance, which, let's admit, is what I'm doing now. You just can't see the script, but it's right here on my screen. The giveaway is that my eyes wander left to right and back again as I traverse the screen in support of the next word. Now, you could say that in reading the text on my screen, I am being scripted by my past self, a version of me that is a few weeks younger than the me speaking now. I suppose I didn't really trust the future me when I wrote this script. I didn't trust that she could handle the pressure of improvisation. So in a way, I wanted to determine her in advance. I wanted to control the way she would stand in for me by scripting her words in advance. Maybe then you are actually hearing a presentation being given not by me, but a slightly younger Katerina, an already historical Katerina, who is no longer with us. So I'm going to try a quick experiment now. So I'm going to stop reading from my script, and I'm going to just try and be myself without reading from the script. And that means that I have to improvise, be a little bit spontaneous, and, as I said previously, search for the next word. But what I would invite you to do then is to compare the me that I am now to the Katerina just now who was reading off the script. And I would invite you to question, am I any less scripted in a sense? Am I any less determined now than who I was just a moment ago when I was reading off my script? And I would argue that even though it's not as conspicuous that I'm following some kind of predetermined agenda, I would say that there are still some invisible scripts, social, historical, biological, linguistic as well, that are kind of pushing me in a certain direction and creating a certain range of behaviours that you can expect from a person like me in a formal university presentation format like this. So with that being said, I'm going to return now and faithfully read from my script again. So there is always some historical agency that propels me into myself, an invisible set of social, cultural and biological scripts that determines the scope of behaviours you can expect from me. I want to know, what are the mechanisms that invoke this range of possible behaviour? I want to know if I have the power to manipulate them experimentally. Can I tamper with my own code and observe the effects within some kind of laboratory of the soul? As an artist, over the past 10 years, I've been developing a performance method inspired by the psychological phenomenon of frame switching. So I do a lot of play acting, using both scripting and improvisation, to experimentally tweak dimensions of my character or personality, and then I observe the outcome in the form of films or art performances. In cultural psychology, frame switching is when a person suddenly or gradually changes their behavior, beliefs, personality, characteristics, and even cognitive processes, depending on the cultural frame they adopt. So in psychology, this is often studied in people identifying with multiple nationalities, since qualities like bilingualism can make frame switching particularly conspicuous. However, I take it that everybody frame switches. At least my own art performances come out of my own experiences with frame switching. Noticing, for example, my accent, or the volume of my laugh, or my level of optimism change in different company, climates, and circumstances. And growing up, I worried a lot about my own authenticity, how fake I was actually, because of the way in which I was caught between different cultural identities and having always to negotiate between them. And for me, it turned out that art and acting was a useful way to explore the boundary between, theatrical performance and then the daily performance of just being yourself. So an example of a potential trigger for frame switching is actually the very situation we are in right now. Something happens at the threshold of entering the mode of introduction. I become a certain somebody, a type of somebody that introduces herself in formal academic seminars. My performance practice gives me an intuition about the dynamics of my own personality bandwidth. It makes me feel comfortable with contradiction. It makes me wary of the distinction between premeditation and authenticity, or even determinism and freedom. I love stories about how the researcher comes to the research, and I value how this seminar potentially raises positionality and perspectivism as a prominent dimension of research, thus including rather than excluding the researcher as a variable in the research. My interests actually lie very much in this by questioning certain assumptions about what positionality even consists in. So I propose that positionality is actually something that can vary within a single person, either temporally, as we realized earlier, that it's my younger self who is speaking now, or even spatially. For instance, what shape do we presume our positionality has? Is it a point located concretely within a constellation of clearly indexed identity markers? And in that case, how do we know which identity markers matter? So for example, I haven't told you my age, or my marital status, or my sexual orientation, or the title of my research, or my ethnic background. How do we decide which dimensions of the self are relevant to a given discourse, especially when, a human is so complex, there are so many of them? On the other hand, does the self and the position it assumes have an entirely different shape than a point, which permits a more fluid conception of having a position? So these are the sorts of elementary questions that I think about in my research, and I think they actually affect how one comes to give an autobiography of oneself or one's research question. So I think I'll stop there.